Jeff Daniels has delivered some very colorful characters throughout his career, with some of the obvious performances coming from Dumb and Dumber, Arachnophobia, The Newsroom, and Godless. He's now taking on the role of a business tycoon in the Netflix limited series A Man in Full, which is based on the novel by the late Tom Wolfe. Now, it's a quick watch, and it can be tense, but is it worthwhile? When Atlanta real estate mogul Charlie Croker faces sudden bankruptcy, political and business interests collide as Charlie defends his empire from those attempting to capitalize on his fall from grace. This is a 6-episode limited series that can be emotionally exhausting thanks to the varying storylines taking place simultaneously. The overarching and common line through all the arcs follows Daniels as Charlie, who's experiencing a strenuous and nerve-wracking several days. Now, his company is facing bankruptcy. He's being pressured by political and family interests, and he's also trying to run his business while taking care of his employees. Throughout the storyline, there's a court case involving one of his employees, some scheming by overly ambitious bankers, and a mayoral race that's getting into the mud to fight. Now, all of these intersect in one way or another, but the question I kept asking myself as I watched, why am I supposed to care? Daniels, he commands the screen anytime he's present. Not only is he just a towering bulk of a man, but the persona that he crafts for Charlie Croker, it's intimidating, cutthroat, domineering, and hubristic. We're not supposed to totally like or sympathize with Charlie, but there are moments here and there when the good, maybe they're honorable, that overtakes the self-important mindset, and he does become sympathetic. And these contradictions are sprinkled throughout the narrative. He'll be wailing obscenities and verbal threats at a banker one moment and then genuinely consoling an employee the next. And it's a roller coaster of emotions, and Daniels leads us through each one effectively. Now, a repeated phrase throughout the series is live with vigor, and we can certainly watch that play out with Charlie. I mean, even if he's offending somebody, he sees it as their opportunity to embrace that rage, or maybe disgust, and hold it tight, because it's a real and valid feeling, letting the person know they are alive and full of vitality. Now, I do appreciate how we watch this sentiment play out through many of the other characters. Take, for instance, the bankers who are after Charlie's assets. The two main ones that the story follows are played by Bill Camp and Tom Pelfrey, and both of these characters are laser-focused on demolishing Charlie. Their internal rage and drive, it just pours out in the performance, creating characters who are just as slimy and off-putting as Charlie can be. And at different times throughout the story, we witness each of them live with vigor. Now, while I'd argue theirs isn't the healthiest of motivations or outlooks, they still embrace their internal passion that makes them value their life. And we also watch this theme be illustrated through a character named Conrad, played by John Michael Hill. Now, Conrad is the Croker employee who finds himself imprisoned and on trial for acting against injustice. There's some scenes where the dude has crawled into himself, but finally, he can't take it anymore, and his vigor is explosive and painful looking. Out of most of the characters we watch, he's one of the most noble and honorable people. Conrad's a character that can be used as a moral comparison with Charlie. While Charlie does have moments of nobility, he's mostly arrogant and cruel. Conrad, on the other hand, is mostly noble, with moments that can be construed as cruel, but are actually just when seen in context. Now, I loved the performances throughout this series. And not just with the ones that I have listed. I mean, there are several more who create spectacular dynamics within the storyline. Diane Lane, Sarah Jones, Aml Amin, William Jackson Harper, Josh Pais, and Anthony Heald all provide compelling characters. Now, we may not like all of them, and we may even hate some, but they're impactful and they add depth to the storytelling. Now, the thing I have the largest problem with, though, is that when all is said and done, I felt like we've just watched a small slice of life for a pompous rich white dude and those that kind of intersect within his chaos. I didn't feel much of anything when the story concluded. I mean, I enjoyed the acting, and the pace of the story was urgent and efficient, but I still can't shake that feeling of how empty the series felt once it hits the final credits. Now, as I'd mentioned before, the examination of the living with vigor theme, that works well, and it creates some intriguing storylines. But even with those, by the end, the entirety of what we watched, it felt futile. And not in that awesome way futility is delivered in cosmic horrors, but I was just left with, hey, now what do we watch? But don't get me wrong, this still has merit if you want to watch talented actors chew through their scenes and sometimes each other. But once it's ended, I think you're going to have a difficult time remembering why it was even happening to begin with. A lot of the sarcastic and biting comedy works, as does the intensity of the drama, creating opportunities for many of the cast to showcase their grit. And for as wonderful as Daniels is in this performance, along with the talented cast that he's surrounded by, this isn't something to push everything else off of your calendar in order to binge. There's sex, nudity, a ton of profanity, and some violence. I give A Man in Full 3 out of 5 couches. So what are you watching this weekend? Anything I should have on my list to check out? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.